Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Imagine the Future. In this month in Cyber March edition. My name is Jeremy Francese, joined as always with Erik Dominguez, ready to chop it up. A lot of stuff going on, and we hope you're doing well. So we're going to get right into it. February catch-up, we'll give you the rundown. We're going to talk through NIST 2.0 cybersecurity update, the first update they've really had this significant since its creation in 2014. The White House releases the update for future software regarding memory safe programming languages, really doubling down on Director Easterly's comment regarding secure by design and putting emphasis on hardware and software providers to make sure that they're releasing things to the market that are secure by design. Talk a little bit about that. Annual threat assessment from of the U.S. intelligence community was released the 5th of February. We'll talk through that a little bit. Little wrap up on the Fulton County incident that we've talked about. And then Microsoft and OpenAI publish a nation state hacker report talking through how cyber attacks and AI are playing a factor. When we go into March, we will talk through NIST's National Vulnerability Database disruption. We will talk through some details related to conversation overflow, bypassing AI, and some trends we're seeing that are impacting incidences and breaches on that side of the house. And then we got a bunch of stuff to talk through that are more regulatory and policy related. NSA Zero Trust Guidance, yearly U.S. Intel congressional testimony. DHS is talking AI roadmaps. FBI and CISA are releasing information around tactics and techniques, but a lot of it's kind of the same thing we've been banging the drum about with email phishing and social engineering, and really the people are the variable. But we'll talk through that. And if we get time, we'll talk a little bit of NVIDIA and some of the work they've been, some of the movement they've been making, and then the events to close it out. Before we get into it, as always, Erik, how are you? I know the last time we were talking, we were on the back of the event that we had you and Adam speaking at with Acquia and AWS on the 19th of March. Give us a little update. How did it go? What was your thoughts? Heard great things about it, and then I'll kind of get us in motion from there.
Yeah, man. The event went really well, in my opinion. We had a really good turnout. We had a good bit of engagement from the audience that was live there with us, and then we also had a good bit of engagement from people that were online that just were able to stream in and stuff like that. Got to tell some more stories and stuff like that. So it was a fun time. Truly enjoyed it and got to meet a really good amount of people in the industry. Made some good friends.
The main talking point from you and Adam was based on the post-authorization Conmon side of the house, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Adam touched on basically you get FedRAMP. What's going to be your next steps? What can you expect to expect, I guess, is the best way to do it. Yeah. I talked around the pen testing side of the house, but a good bit of it was around the red team portion, because that is extremely brand new. We had to we sent out our I guess agenda or plan of action, I guess is a better way of doing it, of saying it rather, to the FedRAMP PMO, and they approved it for us, so that way we have a good baseline as to how to perform red team engagements and what to look for during the reports, when organizations get someone else to do it, or they do it internally or something like that. Copy. So that was a big talking point, because we're all just kind of eating popcorn waiting for the actual true guidance to come out. So we're kind of shooting from the hip right now.
Okay, makes sense. Well, good. I'm happy the event went well. I know Chris, Acquia, and Dave, and the rest of the team. I mean, they do great events. They've done a lot of great things, and so shout out to them. Thank you for including us, but also just great job. I mean, they put together, I think, a lot of great events, and hopefully more to come. Hey, so let's get right into it, right? We'll do our things we missed last month to set the table. I want to pick up and read a quick segment from the annual threat assessment report of the U.S. Intel community. It was released February 5th of last month, and it was from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And I'm not going to go on some long read, but I want to highlight one specific passage that has a couple sentences to it to frame up where we are today directly from the IC community. Obviously, this is sanitized for public release, but this is what they're saying. During the next year, the United States faces an increasingly fragile global order strained by accelerating strategic competition among major powers, more intense and unpredictable transnational challenges, and multiple regional conflicts with far-reaching implications. An ambitious but anxious China, a confrontational Russia, some regional powers such as Iran, and more capable non-state actors are challenging long-standing rules of the international system as well as the U.S. primacy within it. Simultaneously, new technologies, fragilities in public health sector, and environmental changes are more frequent, often have global impact, and are harder to forecast. So look, this report is, a 40, 50 pager that talks about the global dynamic, China, Russia, Iran, some North Korea, threat landscape, weapons of mass. So there's a lot of stuff in here, but I think that frames up the conversation perfectly. So when we dive in and we look at what is happening globally, how does that affect our posture? How does that affect policy? How does that affect what's happening in the world of cyber? These are some things that took place in February that play a role. And so NIST released version 2.0 of the cybersecurity framework last month. They dropped 26th, so we had already put out our episode by the time this was released. But I want to pick this up and talk through this a little bit. Look, the agency created the cybersecurity framework in 2014. There's been small updates to, a version 1.1 in 2018, but there are reports that are talking about this update being the biggest transition from being more of a static resource to an available basket of resources that are all more interconnected and accessible, where they're not just these disparate pieces of information. Big focus is one, they added a governance component to it. And two, this is designed to promote far more accessible adoption of the cybersecurity framework, not just for large infrastructure, large organization, but also for the smaller organizations that still need to build resilience into their organization. And so a couple specific things, and this has updated the CSF core guidance and created a suite of resources to help all organizations achieve cybersecurity goals with an emphasis on governance as well as supply chain. Went on to share a lot of this was done through the R&D with the community, a lot of comments on the drafts, which helped them, which I love to see. We'll talk the governance being the most significant piece of it. But they want to make this so that regardless of your sophistication, it's accessible. When we look through some of the details, let me see. The governance function aims to help organizations incorporate cybersecurity risk management into broader enterprise risk management programs by presenting outcomes or desired states to inform what an organization may do to achieve and prioritize the outcomes of the other 5 functions. Again, it's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Now, governance. And big emphasis on supply chain playing a more prominent role and being more integrated into the other resources. So look, collaboration, access, and making sure that this isn't just big guys playing the game, but these smaller organizations are all collectively locking arms and understanding what True North looks like. Erik, what's your thoughts on this? Obviously, NIST and the cybersecurity framework has been a part of this conversation for a decade. Small updates to 2018, now starting to build into it. Just curious, your initial thoughts, what's top of mind, what it may mean for our conversation today.
So one of the things that really jumps out to me, and you kind of touched on it, was that it's really taking into consideration the smaller organizations now, and I think a big player for that is that in the days of yore, way back, you had to be a powerhouse, a Fortune 100 to even begin to start playing ball with the government and things of that nature. Now with the inclusion of cloud technology, just the proliferation of the internet, it's showing that you don't have to be a Fortune 100 to make a difference. And the fact that the government is recognizing that, I think it's going to be a big boon to the industry as a whole. And then the fact that they are doing it in a very careful manner by implementing cybersecurity, I guess, just frameworks for the smaller guys to say, hey, look, you want to get government contracts? That's awesome. We want you to get government contracts as well. This is what you need to start implementing. it's definitely increasing the threshold without lowering the bar, in my opinion. So it's just great across the board in that regard. And it's going to drive a lot of industry, because if these smaller organizations can get in, then you don't have the price jump that it takes to get into a government contract.
100%. I mean, look, one of the things that NIST has been challenged on with the cybersecurity framework is that, given the nature of nuance to how to respond to certain things and how to handle certain things, they lack really specific details associated with, next steps, in the sense where it's more desired outcomes and it's a little more open. Do you think this provides a bit more guidance to narrow the gap between guessing and knowing, or do you think they're still kind of trying to tiptoe along the line of, look, there's nuance, this is a guideline, it'll keep you in the right direction, but ultimately these are the set of desired outcomes at large we're looking for. If you're not seeing this, you're probably in the wrong. But there is a desire, I think, from the community to say, look, we want some details. We want some really actionable guidelines, especially with FEMA and CISA and EPA and all these different organizations working together to build these joint incident response plans where non-technical people can start to come together and say, hey, how do we get involved here to make sure we're prepared? I'm just curious your thoughts on that. Like, do you think they're heading in that direction? Is that a bit more conjecture? I'm just curious your thoughts.
I think they are heading in that direction. I can tell you that I hope that they are heading in that direction, because ambiguity in these guidelines it really hurts. It hurts a lot more than it helps. And I get it. There are certain things that you want to keep, kind of as an open-ended question, so that way it allows for someone that is on that cutting, bleeding edge to say, no, this is how we're doing X, Y, Z, and that is awesome.
100%.
However, the double-edged sword of that is that if you don't have specifics in there, and we've touched on this in previous episodes, to where you have the people that just want the squeak clean report. If it's not mandated verbatim, then they say, no, you're pushing the envelope too far. We don't want to do this. And I get it. It's the balance of, it takes money to plug security holes.
Right.
So you have budget constraints, but at the same time, it's a big gamble. And when you're dealing with, federal government type stuff, you're not just gambling your company's, name and reputation. At that point, you're into national defense, national security territory. So I think that, it's that fine line that we have to walk. Yes, there does need to be that vagueness in there to keep it open and allow for that cutting edge aspect, but at the same time, there needs to be a level of, this is not just a guideline. If you don't at least make this minimum standard right here, then you can't play in the game.
Well, look, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, the same day that was released with NIST on the 26th of February, the same day, the White House released a press release with additional resources, but talked about the future software should be memory safe, talks about building with moving to memory safe programming languages, so kind of shifting stories. There was a report that they released called Back to the Building Blocks, a Path Towards Secure and Measurable Software. Biden and Harris administration are basically saying, and it's really building on the back of what the national security professionals are advocating for in the House Select Committee in Congress, saying, we have to be secure by design. Manufacturers, software developers, hardware, software players, they need to take responsibility over what they ship to the marketplace, because by the time they let it go, there's already built-in vulnerabilities that now we're handing off to some other player, whether it's a small business, a nonprofit, a school, or very large institutions. This release had a couple strategic shifts, but it really just doubles down on that effort, where they're saying, and Director Easterly saying, we need to put more pressure on manufacturers of hardware and developers of software to own what they ship and be more diligent on the front end, so that they can avoid a lot of the downstream implications. But it also talked about two different things, right? So today, the White House, again, this is February 26th, White House Office of the National Cyber Director, ONCD, released a report calling on the technical community to proactively reduce the attack surface in cyberspace. ONCD makes the case that technology manufacturers can prevent entire classes of vulnerabilities from entering the digital ecosystem by adopting memory-safe programming languages. Now, they're sharing that this is to encourage the community to address problem of software measurability as well, to enable better diagnostics and visibility. I think that's an interesting point. I mean, we talk a little bit about, do we need a new tool or do we just need to do the work? And obviously it's not a this or that, it's not mutually exclusive, but there comes a point where, do we need more tools or do we just need to enforce things better? But you need the tools and the visibility and the diagnostics to know how to enforce it. So that's another topic, but main things this talks about, one is placing responsibility on the big guys in this case, big manufacturers, big software providers, big organizations, to say you need to have the diagnostic capabilities in place, and you need to be able to make sure that you're putting the pressure on what you're building and releasing so that it's not releasing vulnerabilities in the marketplace and it's secure by design. And the second thing was aligning more towards long-term investment so that it's not a tactic here and there, but it is something that is a bit more of a long pole in the tent. What are your thoughts with this? I mean, did you get a chance to dig into it? I know National Director Harry Coker was, really the main voice here. I'm sure there's other, contributors, but I'm just curious your thoughts on this shift to memory safe and programming and just in general.
Yeah, so when we talk about memory safe stuff, and I guess for a lot of our audience, will kind of give a high level definition of what they're talking about here. Historically, whenever you write a program and it is compiled, all right, a lot of that runs in memory, all right, and once again, this is going way back, almost a decade or more at this point. You could do what was called buffer overflows in that. Now that has evolved into the same concept, but just different tactics due to how memory and programs work and stuff like that. And they have built-in defenses around it. But bad guys still inevitably figure out ways to get things to run in memory on behalf of the program. And that's essentially what a buffer overflow is. The program has permission in the computer to do something that is administrative in nature. You run the buffer overflow, it runs that code instead of the actual computer code that's written, and then the bad guy has execution at the administrative level on the computer. That is what happens in memory, and that is what they are wanting us to get away from by using programming languages that aren't ran in memory like that. They are ran in memory, but the language itself is ran in memory, not just the compiled program.
Understood.
All right. So the hard part about that, and just to be very transparent here, I am not a developer. Like one of the instances that it mentioned there was a programming language called Rust. Rust is it's a very powerful programming language and stuff like that. The hard part, though, from my experience, and I'm sure there's going to be someone out there that's going to enlighten me a little bit on this, but Rust is it's not as powerful as some other languages like C++ or something along those lines. So I'm curious to see how the industry is going to adapt to have those programs that actually run that are just as powerful as compiled in memory languages, but without the running in memory feature, so that's where I'm wanting to see. Now, once again, I may have been completely off the mark on, Rust being not as powerful. I'm sure that I just offended all kinds of developers out there, and I did not mean to. But regardless, that is where I'm curious and excited to see how this is going. So the White House is definitely pushing some things that are going to cause a stir and really, make some interesting challenges for our development teams.
Well, I think it comes back to change management and process. And, all of this comes down to your ability to sustain the change of behavior required to change the input and how people contribute to the work. And so I'm very interested to see, one other comment from National Cyber Director Harry Coker. We're doing this because available data and common vulnerabilities and exposures identify it as it being the shift. As one of the most pervasive class of bugs for decades, it is clear that the creators of software and of hardware are best positioned to address the problem. So it comes back to, do we want to fix it after, or do we want to go to the source? They believe, based on the data, that this is the best way to go to the source. But again, it's about being able to implement and sustain the change. And so we shall see. But don't be surprised if you hear more about the White House and its urge to switch to memory-safe programming languages as a method to resolving future cyber attacks. Quick comment on the other Catchup story, Fulton County, that breach that we talked about in January, and then have kept current. Look, there's no further threat or any known release of sensitive data from the January breach. However, the one thing I wanted to point out is that even today in March, now, again, when this is released, it could have been changed based on recent updates, but based on what I'm reading in early March, they're still stating that the main system that was affected is the court system, and work's being done to get that back online, but there's no ETA on it. There are other systems that are back. Things are starting to come together. But what I wanted to bring up here as we kind of start to transition into the last story in a second is, sometimes we don't see the cost of something until we realize how long it takes to clean it out and get it back online. I'm just curious your thoughts on that, Erik, on, is that a surprise when you hear this, or is it one of those things like, look, when something gets taken down, it's going to take time to get things back operational?
That's well known in the industry. When you're working on the back end type stuff, it may not be as well known to leadership as to how long it takes to scrub out a threat actor who's gotten inside of a network.
Right.
Because and that's part of what you do during a pen test, during a red team engagement, is you see, can I set up a backdoor to get back in once they kick me out?
Right.
That's what the bad guys do. So that aspect of checking everything, yes, it takes a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of effort.
Right.
Which is it goes back to putting compliance above security. It's a big gamble to do that, and especially when you're talking about federal data and national security, that kind of stuff, nation state attackers.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising to me, but I think it's probably a gut punch to a few of the leaders over there.
I bet. Well, look, perfect segue. February, the last of the catch-up stories, and then we'll get to March. Microsoft, OpenAI warn of nation-state hackers weaponizing AI for cyber attacks. This is a mid-February release. A couple quotes from it, and we'll talk about it. Microsoft quoted stating, language support is a natural feature of LLMs and is attractive for threat actors with continuous focus on social engineering and other techniques, relying on false, deceptive communications tailored to their targets' jobs, professional networks, and other relationships. Not in a quote, but continued on in the write-up. While no significant or novel attacks employing the LLMs have been detected to date, adversarial exploration of AI's technologies has transcended various stages of the attack chain, such as reconnaissance, code assistance, and malware development. Look, we talked earlier before going live. Sometimes it feels like we're just banging this drum, but look, the reality is this is going to be a recurring theme. It's going to be a recurring topic. The role LLMs play, the role, excuse me, AI plays. What I want to, excuse me, sorry for that, guys. I'll pose to you, Erik, is how has your perspective on AI, LLMs, cyber evolved since maybe we started this format back in January? Or do you read something like this and just say, yeah, of course, next story, because it's kind of just common sense?
No, you definitely don't just read it and say, all right, yeah, next story. We have to adapt, we have to evolve. When I read that one of the things that stood out to me was that Microsoft is looking out for it, they're addressing it and everything. But what the story, and obviously Microsoft can't be in control of everything. They don't own AI,
Right.
They just own their AI. So they are doing their part. But what a lot of people may not understand is that you can spin up your own. that is not there. So, that isn't monitored. You're doing it on your own. And that's where we have started doing internally here at EIT.
Yeah.
Versus just using, yes, we have OpenAI tools that we use, and we utilize those during our red team, during our pen test, stuff like that. But we also have our own language models that guys on the team are training, they're building, so that way we can be up to par with what the bad guys are doing. If we're like, just being in the industry, you're always going to be 2 steps behind. But if you aren't training the same as what the bad guys are training for, you're gonna be left behind very quickly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm glad that EIT is allowing us to do, and that we do, is not just go out and buy some other AI type tool. We're actually, able to spin up some LLMs, train them, and start seeing what we can do, what the bad guys can do, stuff like that. And I think that's what other organizations need to do. Don't take this as just a story, take it as a warning. The bad guys are using it. And they're using, I mean, like, it instantly went from, cheating on, having ChatGPT write an essay for you, to now it is being used to bypass, AI defenses in Fortune 500 companies and
Right.
Fortune 100 companies. That shows the strength and the resilience of what AI can do. And that's happening, what, in less than a year?
Right, exactly. We're not even started.
Yeah. So it's
Well, and I think so. It's a perfect segue right now to keep us rolling, right? From Catchup in January now to kind of active activity from March, right? This month had a lot of stuff going on, some recurring themes that tie into network security and zero trust, secure by design. There was some commentary around phishing and different strategies for social engineering. But I want to pick up 2 incidences that are from March and unpack them, and then we'll go to regulatory and the Fed. First instance is relating to conversation overflow. Cyber attacks bypass AI security to target executives. Now, this is talking about credential stealing emails are getting past artificial intelligence's known good email security controls by cloaking malicious payloads within seemingly benign emails. This is some content from Nathan Eddy, contributing to Dark Reading. The tactics pose a threat to enterprise networks. Now, the reason I jumped in was, you're talking about the ability to use these tools to, break into and penetrate a Fortune 100, Fortune 200, Fortune 300, Fortune 1000. But I think when you flip it and think through, the more they use it, the more they understand how they work. And the more they understand how they work, the more they can reverse engineer how to go against it. And so this talks about these emails can escape AI, ML algorithms threat detection, goes on to talk about, as opposed to traditional security controls, which rely on detecting known bad securities, right? Simplified, and Erik, tell me where I'm wrong. Something scanning everything. There's a library of X number of known bad actors and or symptoms of a bad attribute. If it connects the dots, it identifies it as something that is bad, it labels it, moves it, and it's not a problem. But when you flip the script to an AI or an ML algorithm relying on identifying deviations from known good, now you're trying to show that you have a human tendency that they should let slide, right?
Right. And that kind of goes into one of the issues that we run into when we're doing engagements, and that is heavy reliance on tools and not training. And because at the end of the day, if the algorithms are getting bypassed, but the end user can identify it,
Yes.
then they can just mark it as trash, keep going. Now, so I think that is where this is kind of going, is a lot of people have fears that AI is going to steal jobs. I've heard that a lot. And I'm not going to pretend like there aren't going to be some jobs that probably AI can do, but there's also going to be situations, especially in security, to where at the without a doubt, the last line of defense is going to be the employee, and it's going to be training. What I think that a good thing for AI to do at this point would be to figure out how to train employees to where it is more, they're more receptive to it than sitting down watching a 20-minute video that they're just clicking next on because they want to get through it. It's not enjoyable to do security training. And at this point,
you almost wish that there was something you could install as an organization that would just do spontaneous and random internal like phishing attacks that then send you the report and analytics where it's, to supplement the pen testing, but do it in a way where you're able to say, look, like, it's an internal, I don't know if the bot or whatever you set up, but that way you can just sporadically and randomly stress test the organization without it having, like, it's just a part of the process. It's a part of the organization. And then you get the reports of like, man, we have a problem. Like if things get, and obviously that's the role of the pen testing shop, but,
no, I mean, there are tools that do that.
We talked about this last episode of like why you need to allow list or whitelist, whatever you want to call it, because it's a human problem, it's a human element. It's not your AI, ML, your bots and tools, but at the end of the day, if the people on the other side assume a tool is going to do it, then you're equally as vulnerable.
100%. Yeah. If you are, there's a difference between using a tool and then relying on a tool.
100%. And look, it talks. I think this is an interesting shift, but when this threat's well understood and mitigated at all the time, malicious actors will focus on different methods. That's a comment from this. I think it talks about secure by, it ties back to secure by design, I think, in a sense where bad actors are always going to be innovative because it's honestly, I look at hackers and marketers almost the same way, where the second a new marketing channel becomes useful and interesting and new, like TikTok becomes this new thing musically, 2014, 15, 16, then it becomes TikTok. Like that was so new that marketers were like all over it and they swarmed it. And then they kill it, right? Because they just now everything, and obviously it's not at that stage yet, but like Facebook now and Instagram is just ads every third post. Email is now so inundated with ads. Marketers find new things and they destroy it because by the time masses, now the first thing you look up on Google, the first 6 links are AdWords, ads, right? Not a bad thing. It's just human behavior. I almost look at hackers and adversaries similarly, where the second they see a tactic no longer work, their immediate thing is, what's the new thing? What do I do? What do I do? If we're not secured by design, then that's a problem in its own right. But this, I think, is an interesting piece where every article and comment and event we talk about, it does feel like a significant percentage of them tie back to a lack of respect to just the fundamentals of preparing people to be the line of defense.
Right, because just like you just described, all of those different tactics in marketing, for instance, like you said, they all focus back to the one common denominator, and which is getting to the person, us.
100%.
And that's why the attackers aren't going for, I mean, social engineering is the number 1 way of getting in. They know that the end user is the weakest link. That's, you can have $1 million worth of firewalls and software, but 1 click from an end user and it's all bypassed.
See ya.
And so, that's where this comes into play is, and I guess that's kind of the double-edged sword of AI. Before we had AI, we were, the bad guys were kind of fighting against the other developers. For instance, it was, and that's, you saw the stories of the hacker who was caught and then got hired by the company to start protecting it. That is the Cinderella story for a hacker.
100%.
And now that's almost changed because AI is now it's just AI versus AI, and we're just at the we're just doing the joystick. We're just hitting the button of, all right, now you do this. And then the other AI is like, all right, we caught that. It's a chess match between AIs at this point.
Which puts greater emphasis on where do you point it? And that takes us
Right.
to our next topic. Mid-March, NIST, what was it? NIST's National Vulnerability Database Disruption sees CVE enrichment on hold. Long and short of this, which I think is really fascinating, and actually some good comments in this article from Chris, over with Acquia, Chris Hughes. And look, the sentiment is only 200 out of the 2,700 vulnerabilities known as CVE, common vulnerabilities and exposures, published since since February 12th, have been enriched. Meaning they're basically saying we have a problem, but we're not giving you enough information to know what problem, where is it, how to solve it, and really who's to take ownership over it. Some good charts in here that maybe we drop in and post and kind of overview, but I think it's really interesting that the significant drop in CVEs under the status of analyzed, meaning they have been fully documented, and an uptick is awaiting analysis compared to 2023. I am very curious as to your thoughts, because it's basically like pointing out we have these 1,000 problems, 2,000 problems, but despite new vulnerabilities being published, they're currently not tagged to specific products, leaving organizations blind to what products and systems in their environments the specific vulnerabilities may be impacting. It's kind of a chicken and egg of like, what do you want people to do if you don't give them the information to adequately respond? But it also begs the question, are they adjusting how they handle this such that they're making a shift organizationally, hierarchically, structurally, to how they're handling the situation moving forward? There's a lot of questions. And I think a lot of people in the space are frustrated because they're like, look, I can't do my job if you don't give me the information.
Right.
So,
and I think you're kind of hitting on both at the same time. Because it does, it begs the question of, why is there such a big change? Why is there such a big drop in it? But at the same time, just like you mentioned, how are they handling things different? With the inclusion of all of this new technology and stuff like that.
yeah.
It really, really makes you just go down almost a conspiracy theorist, rabbit hole in some regard. Don't want to go down that path right this very second, but it does make you, question. It's like, okay, what changed other than, big things such as AI,
Right.
that's AI takes off, and then suddenly all of these things quit getting posted.
And look, there are
what else has changed?
some comments about NIST hinting at a new national vulnerability database consortium. So look, maybe there's some structural changes to the way they want to manage this moving forward. But again, Chris Hughes, president of Acquia, was quoted in the article, basically saying like, what exactly is this consortium? Who's involved? What changes are going to be made? What sort of delays can we expect? All the right questions to say is like, awesome, you guys are making some updates, but what the heck does it mean? What do we do today? And so the question becomes, is there change afoot? And what does that look like? What does it mean? What are the implications, or rather, what are the ramifications of it? Hypotheses explaining the need for a consortium remain unknown, but a lot of strategies, a lot of tactics, a lot of different approaches to things like the software bill, software bill of materials, and different ways to understand truly what's being built and where's that, how's that affect, what gets pushed to the marketplace. But look, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of change. We can only expect that. That's just a matter of what it means for day to day. But
yeah, I mean, like, it's just and this one's very difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around, to be honest, man. It just, there's so many what ifs on that. When I read this story, when you sent it to me, there's so many things that this brings up more questions than it does answers, obviously.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one that I think we should definitely follow, because it's hard to have a solid point of view when the story is there's not enough information.
Couldn't agree more, man. So, hey, we're transitioning to federal and government policy and what's what I'm looking for. Government and regulatory updates from the month. A couple things. Main stuff I wanted to dig into is zero trust, NSA, and some of the details there. There was a continuation. Obviously, we talked about CISA, releasing some joint incident response plans with the Bureau and different agencies to provide a better standardized response for technical and non-technical contributors to an emergency, to a threat. But a lot of this, the FBI, CISA release, an IOCs for Phobos ransomware, indicators of compromise for Phobos ransomware. Look, it's the same stuff. It's email, it's phishing. It is the same stuff. And it just continues to hit home that what we were just talking about. So, if there's any thoughts you wanted to add there, then let me know. We can unpack it. But I actually wanted to glance over this and say more stuff's coming out associated with the role email phishing, social engineering is playing as a potential channel for adversaries to penetrate and infect systems. But this feels like just the same thing we've been banging the drum on. So, unless you want anything you want to talk about before we get to the next story with NSA and zero trust.
I would say that the main thing on that is just going to be, for anyone out there who's wanting to get around, get ahead of this, start implementing MITRE ATT&CK framework. That's what all of this is around. That's what MITRE is based around, is identifying those IOCs, like you said. So that's what we are doing with our clients, and this just demonstrates the need for it.
100%. NSA Zero Trust Guideline. NSA releases maturity guidance for the Zero Trust Network and Environmental Pillar. This was early March. The NSA is releasing a cybersecurity information sheet today. It's March 5th that details curtailing adversarial lateral movement within an organization's network to access sensitive data and critical systems through this CSI. They're calling it, quote, advancing zero trust maturity through the network and environment pillar, provides guidance on how to strengthen internal network control and contain network intrusion to a segmented portion of the network using zero trust principles. Look, they go on to talk about in a number of different cases, really just bridging the gap between desire for and implementation of zero trust and untrusted until verified, and really this permanent state of skepticism. Talks a little bit about policy, governance, who has access to what, identity and access control, you name it. But I think this is an interesting point to double down on as far as when we think about phishing and email and social engineering. And then on the other side of it, you have an understanding of this AI and LLM intersection of what that can do as a potential resource to build a stronger attack, and a continued focus on the human element that we keep focusing on. Is like, at the end of the day, you can't over rely on things. You can use them, but your people need to understand what their behavior should be such that it promotes better resilience. I think this is a really interesting topic. I know group of us, we were working with the guys over at Amuda. It's a product company built out of the Intel community, really helps streamline. It's a poor summary of it, but basically it's one of those tools where if you're working with different data warehouses, data lakes, all of the different policies that govern who has access to what, becomes incredibly overwhelming. And that sits on top of it. It makes it all a lot easier so you can better manage all the data and access control. We have other organizations and other customers even that are talking about how do we integrate Azure Directory with any identity access management like an Okta so that everything's synchronized really well. Identity management and network control seem to be more and more of a priority. Not that it wasn't always, but it seems to be something that I'm seeing a lot more of. I'm just curious your thoughts on it, and anything that maybe you didn't expect, something that maybe hits home. Just curious your thoughts on NSA Zero Trust Guidelines. And then obviously their focus on segmentation. That's not a new topic, but it seems to be an emphasized point they want to continue to bring to the top of the pile. Just curious your thoughts, Erik.
For me, one of the things that honestly stands out to me around the zero trust model itself is it's an exciting time in the pen testing world, in my opinion, for that. Because it definitely takes out some of the heart and soul of what we do during penetration tests, and that is pivoting. If there's zero trust, and that's by design of the zero trust model, is to prevent pivoting, among other things, but that's one of the core foundations. And I'm curious to see if it, now I personally don't believe it is the end all be all answer. I believe that,
Yeah.
you know, just like with anything, there's going to be adaptations and things that happen that, that truly allow, you know, it's going to be the next big thing for the bad guys, you know.
Right.
And that's kind of my take in terms of being excited for it is, you know, I don't want to pretend like I'm that smart. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I do know that, you know, there are already blogs out there and stuff on the best ways to do zero trust penetration testing, zero trust red team efforts. It's going to be a big learning curve, I think, for a lot of us in the industry.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm also very excited to see how it happens because I think it's going to be some really cool techniques and tools and everything that come out of that. And the fact that the government is pushing it, because I do know that it did have a bit of a cost associated with it. You know, uh, taking a standard network model and then transitioning it to a zero trust, it's not cheap. Like there's no way around it. You know,
Yeah.
that's not cheap at all. And for many organizations having to completely rebuild it, you know, for the smaller organizations like we were talking about earlier,
Right.
they now have that knowledge that says, hey, if we want to start playing game with the government, we just need to start from the ground up and build it as zero trust. That because it's going to be a requirement.
Right.
I think all
Exactly.
of those are fantastic. You know, we're laying some solid foundation. I just really hope that the organizations out there don't water it down.
Yeah. We shall see, right? Only time will
Yes, yes,
tell.
definitely.
But I think this is something that we're going to have to follow. Obviously, zero trust timeline is ticking. John Kindervag, one of the first, if not, you know, some call him the first to define the term zero trust back in 2010, was when he was an analyst at Forrester Research, spoke about this and referenced NSA's move, noting that, quote unquote, very few organizations have understood the importance of network security controls in building zero trust environments. And this document, their reference to, what's it called? The release maturity guidance for zero trust network and environment pillar. It goes a long way towards helping organizations understand the value. And so I think we shall see segmentation, microsegmentation, etc. Human is the element, managing access is a logical follow-on and a part of the process. So cheers to that. All right. The last thing I want to, there's two stories technically we want to jam on for sec. One was the House Congress testimony from Intel chiefs, and the other was DHS laying out AI plans in their new roadmap. Do you want to jam on both? One, what were your thoughts? And then we can close out with some final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, let's touch base on both, and let's just kind of see where it goes.
So,
So,
TechCrunch put out an article on the 11th of March, 4 things we learned when U.S. intelligence chiefs testified to Congress. They talked mass destruction, terrorism, spyware, AI, misinformation, disinformation, and a whole lot more. Look, the main thing I thought was really fascinating that I pulled out and would love to get your take on maybe what caught your attention. The thing that caught my attention was this, where they basically posed the question for when you look at how many countries and how many organizations around the world are using commercial spyware to gain information, gather information. They said at least 74 countries use commercial spyware as a method of gaining insight and information, monitoring, etc. But it begs one question, which I really thought was quite interesting in the last section, which was there's no laws limiting U.S. spies from just buying the data. So basically posing the question, why get a warrant for data when you could just buy it? There's so many data brokers out there. Why not just acquire the data legally and then use it at your discretion? So that is the thing I'm most curious about, because it does bring up a phenomenal point where there's a marketplace for really anything you want. If you really look at how do I buy the data? Instacart can probably sell data on what consumers are looking at buying and how frequently and what they're doing and what credit card providers are like. I'm sure there is, and I don't know that, but I'm sure there's unlimited resources to say, I would like to find access to this data to go find somebody willing to sell the data legally on a market because they have it and they can do it. But I'm just curious what caught your attention in this article and what your analysis of that read is.
Honestly, my attention was brought to the exact same spot that yours was. The US spies buying the data.
Yeah.
Because, when you really boil it down, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this in some form. I know I have experienced it numerous times. Having a conversation with some friends about XYZ, go home that night, lay in bed, scroll some Facebook before going to sleep, and suddenly I get an ad for XYZ pop up on my Facebook feed. And that's because your phone's listening to you.
Yep.
It heard the conversation and it's like, hey, if you're talking about this, maybe you want to know about that, and a prime example of that is I was just in one of my friends' weddings, and for 2 solid weeks, I was getting wedding ads on Facebook. And, it truly does make you wonder because without a doubt, and, just being real here, Facebook and social media in general probably know more about you than your family does.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It hears the private conversations that you have. It reads all of your text messages. It reads all of your messenger messages. It sees everything that you Google. Things that and not getting too weird with it, but the things that you don't want your family to see that you are looking up on the internet, Facebook knows about it. That's just a harsh reality. And so a spy buying that around American data, that is invaluable,
100%.
because like if it's listening, think about how much private data is overheard just from a phone being in the pocket from the president, from the president of a company. Corporate secrets are all inside of Facebook or just social media databases right now.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you can buy it, it is surprising to me. And honestly, it never really crossed my mind, but it is valid that the court might say, hey, yeah, you can't do this. You need a court order for XYZ.
Yeah.
But an easier way might just be, all right, well, if we can't get a court order, but we're just going to buy it from you. And Facebook's like, oh, okay, well, that's a different,
Right.
yeah, here, pay MSRP and you got it.
I think it's gonna be really interesting to see how that develops. And I'm pretty pro free market, obviously. Just how what we talk about is let the market decide. There is some risk that once it's out of the bag, it's out of the bag. And if
100%.
I talked with one of the guys we work with, Jeff Prager, as smart as it gets, as sharp as it gets. And, he spends a lot of his time, based on at least last time we talked, his current role is basically looking at like risk as a whole, where he's over with Deloitte. And basically what they're doing is saying, if a company is buying a product from so-and-so, what's the true supply chain risk? So if, let's say, for example, company A wants to buy company B, and company B is the maker of this one little piece. But then you look at it and say that little piece gets sent to, manufacturing facility in, Europe somewhere, and then that gets sent to somewhere in the States. And then 7 layers in, it eventually becomes the widget that's tied into the dash inside of a US Air Force Seahawk Romeo, it's like, okay, well, the Chinese company that wants to buy that small little manufacturer of that one little disparate part technically is buying something in our Defense Department's supply chain. So we can't, right? Excuse me. And so the point being is when you get really, really great visibility into it, you can make potentially better decisions associated with risk mitigation, risk management. And so these are the type of things when you look at and wonder like what controls are put in place associated with the brokering of data, even if it's a free market, to make sure that it isn't actually creating a risk for the US and for our own interests.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the TikTok thing, people complaining about our data going to China, and they're complaining about it on an iPhone that was built in China.
Right. What do they think? So look, segueing into the last of the government and policy and regulation, Department of Homeland Security is what's the word I'm looking for? On Monday, was this last? I want to say last week. This was March 18th, so I think it was like the 11th or something like that. Released it mid-March. Its first ever artificial intelligence roadmap. It was meant to spell out the agency's current use of the technologies and its plans for the future. Key points include a DHS-wide policy directive on AI, new guidance from CISA focused on AI security, expected reports from the Counter Weapons and Mass Destruction Office focused on technology risk. Look, it's all generally speaking the same tone, which is it's moving incredibly fast. We need to keep up and stay ahead. And they're starting to get more direct on the expectations for what they want to do to leverage the technology for better and what they need to do to prepare for in the worst. Any thoughts on this as we kind of wind down the episode? I know we got a hard stop at 1:15 the next 7 minutes, but with that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and once again, we're kind of harping on everything that we've already mentioned in here, so I don't want to go on a broken record, but it's an exciting time, I guess is just to put a little bit more of a spin on it, to see, how much, one simple part that something that 2 years ago was science fiction is now on a roadmap with DHS. I mean, that's phenomenal. That shows how much innovation is coming. I think that all of us that work in the industry are, as long as we stay ahead of the game on that, we're going to prosper from it.
Yeah.
But the thing that to remember isn't we have to stay ahead of the game. If you are not looking at the AI, if you are not looking at reading these roadmaps and seeing what the government's doing, you're going to get left behind.
100%. All right. NVIDIA is obviously on a rocket ship, and so a little bit of tools and tech. We want to get a little more involved. There's so much to get through in the segment. I don't want to get too deep into it. A couple stories, but main thing being, with what's happening with AI and there's some comparisons with NVIDIA and AWS. Both kind of stumbled into certain opportunities, right? Where AWS built their infrastructure or Amazon built the infrastructure for storage, et cetera, which ended up becoming AWS because they said we built it for ourselves. We can sell it to others. NVIDIA built created the GPUs for gaming and realized, man, this math and the nature of it, it actually works really well for the AI workload. And I'm just curious your thoughts and if you're tracking it at all. I don't want to get too deep into like the business side, but just thinking from a technology standpoint, any thoughts on the NVIDIA rocket ship and if that's even on your radar as far as something, or you want to just keep moving and close things out?
Oh, it's definitely on my radar. One of the big things about spinning up your own AI, you run into that issue when you're trying to find cloud hosted computers that can manage AI, because it's a lot of GPU power. And one of the cool things that, from the pen test world and stuff like that is that GPU power was used for cracking passwords.
Right.
Also used for, data mining or crypto mining, stuff like that. So it makes sense that it's being used for AI. And yeah, I think that NVIDIA, if they don't jump on it, being that is their wheelhouse, that it is a missed opportunity.
Yep.
So I'm greatly looking forward to seeing what they come up with, but there are already other cloud services that are doing that specifically for standing up language models and testing them and stuff.
Love it. All righty. I'm going to rapid fire through some events. Obviously, the Acquia and AWS event that we were a part of March 19th is in the rearview mirror by today. Here are some events coming out in the next 60 days or so. April 4th, we have the Philadelphia Cybersecurity Conference. It's virtual as well as locally in Philly. SANS New to Cyber Summit 24, April 4th to the 15th, virtual and on-site. Cybersecurity Implications of AI Summit in Seattle is the 16th of April. Google's next, Google Cloud Next 24 is in Vegas, April 9th to the 11th. And RSA is hot and coming up. San Fran, May 6th to the 9th. I know we'll be out there with a crew. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff happening. General tone, zero trust, access, network security, emphasis on people, emphasis on accessibility, emphasis on collective resources to make sure that everybody understands what's needed, expected, and required to ensure that we can build resilience. Got to make sure we're not over-reliant on tools and we're neglecting the fact that there's a human factor in play. But as always, next month, we'll come back with a This Month in Cyber to catch up anything we missed in March, anything new in April. Mr. Dominguez, any closing thoughts for us before I close this out?
Man, just looking forward to it. Have a blast doing these, and like the industry's growing at an exponential rate right now, so it's going to be some fun times.
It is a good time to be engaged, and I'm sure we'll have more on all things AI, cyber, and tech in the next one. But for now, enjoy, and we will be back soon for more. See you guys.